Hello again and welcome back to our This Is How We Grow personal growth group. I'm Dr. Christina Hibbert and I'm excited for our lesson today on self-acceptance. Last time in our lesson we worked on self-awareness, which is the first step in that pyramid of self-worth that we're working through, because discovering your true worth and value and feeling it and getting rid of all the doubts and worries and concerns about yourself is a huge part of the process of discovering your life's purpose and calling and fulfilling that in your life. So we need to work through these levels of the pyramid of self-worth before we can get to that point where we really can embrace our purpose in life and fulfill that calling that we have here on this earth. Because without self-confidence, self-awareness, self-acceptance, self-worth, it's really hard to do all of that other stuff, to really get out there and give it what you've got in this world. So last time, like I said, we worked on self-awareness. We started trying to see our strengths and our weaknesses, trying to understand how we are in the world, how we are with people and in our relationships. There were several different exercises from last time that I hope you've been working on. I hope you've been working on trying to see all of yourself, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the exceptional. Today we're going to work on how to try to accept those things about ourselves. And I want to start with a quote by Lao Tzu, which says, "Because one believes in oneself, one doesn't try to convince others. Because one is content with oneself, one doesn't need another's approval. Because one accepts oneself, the whole world accepts him or her." That's what self-acceptance is really about, and why we're focusing on that today, because it's hard for others to accept us until we accept ourselves. It's hard for us to not need that self-esteem, that approval from others, until we can really accept who and how we really are. We don't have to convince others of our worth. We just know it and we feel it. We're confident and comfortable with who we are. I want to define self-acceptance a little bit. I find that this is a really hard thing for most people to accept ourselves, and we're going to talk in a minute about why it's so hard. But what do you think the word self-acceptance means to you? You know, give that some thought for a second. What does it mean? What would it look like if you were to accept yourself completely? If you were to say, I practice self-acceptance, what would that mean for you? What would that look like? Some common definitions of the word accept are to come to terms with something, to process something, or to receive it for review. So to quote from my book, Who Am I Without You, coming out in March 2015, I say, accepting yourself therefore means you are ready to come to terms with yourself. So are you ready to come to terms with yourself? That's an important question, because if you're not ready for that, it's probably not going to happen, even if we're working on it. And then to continue, self-acceptance is the process of being where we are long enough to appreciate where we have been and where we are headed. That's my definition of self-acceptance. I'll read that again. Self-acceptance is the process of being where we are long enough to appreciate where we have been and where we are headed. It is an end to the pursuit of self-esteem and trying to be something or someone. Self-acceptance allows us instead to discover who we really are. That's the purpose of self-acceptance, and why we're working on it today, is so that we can forget self-esteem and focus on who we really are and be that person comfortably in the world. Okay? So, but like I said, self-acceptance is hard. So I used to always work on this with clients, and I would work on self-awareness, and we'd start to see all the good stuff about them and the not so good, but start to, really kind of understand who they are. And then I would say, so can you accept that these things are true about yourself? I mean, we found them. Can you accept them? And I don't know why I expected that it would be easy for them to just say, yes, of course I accept them, because obviously they're true. We've seen them, we've discovered them, we've uncovered them. But no, a lot of the times, especially with the women in my practice, they've had a hard time accepting, and they'd say, well, no, I mean, I know they're there and I can think it in my head, but I don't feel it in my heart. So that's why I started trying to work on, okay, how do you teach someone to accept themselves if they don't know how? Carl Jung once said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Do you think that's true? Is it terrifying to accept oneself completely? Is it terrifying to accept yourself completely? And if so, why? What is so terrifying about accepting who we are and how we are? It's no secret that we all have our positives and our negatives. It's no secret that we all have our strengths and weaknesses, right? But why is it so hard to accept them in ourselves? I know for me, I can even accept in other people things so much more easily than I can accept them in myself. This past month, I have been working on self-acceptance again. And in fact, it's ironic because I was proofreading my final copy of my book, Who Am I Without You? And I had to be proofreading it, and it was right during a time when I really needed it. And so reading through it actually really helped me, because it reminded me that I needed to accept where I was in my life and what was going on. I suddenly found myself in a winter time again, and I did not want to be in winter. I thought I was going to be in summer. I'd been working really hard to try to be healthy and strong and well and to be summery, and all of a sudden, you know, my body, my mind was winter. And it was very difficult for me, and I was speaking with a friend about it, and she said, well, what would you tell your clients? And I said, that's the thing. I know what I'd tell my clients. Of course I'd tell them to accept where they are and that it's okay, and you know, it's okay that we all struggle. We all have our times that are tough, and it's okay to get help, and it's okay to, you know, do the things you need to do to be well. I said, I know that, but again, I didn't feel that. And this was just a few weeks ago. You know, I didn't feel that. I didn't feel accepting of where I was. I was fighting it. I was really fighting it. As I said, and this is how we grow, sometimes the problem is in the trying. Sometimes the problem isn't that we're not trying hard enough, it's that we're trying too hard. We're trying so hard that we're not actually being where we are. We're not actually loving. We're not actually, you know, being healthy. We're trying to be healthy, but we're actually making ourselves unhealthy by trying so hard to be healthy. Does that kind of make sense? I hope so. So that's where I found myself. So self-acceptance is something that I know is hard, because you might go through a process of accepting certain parts of yourself, and then you find yourself in another place in your life where you can't accept certain things. So it's ironic, because right before this time that I'm speaking of a few weeks ago, about a month and a half ago, I went and spoke to a group in California, and I did a book club there with the group. And when I was talking to the book club, they were talking about how in my book, This Is How We Grow, how I struggled with self-worth. And I was talking about how I've really, really learned to really have confidence in myself, to love myself, to accept myself, to appreciate, you know, where I've been and what I've been through and my strengths and weaknesses, and that I really could say honestly that I had grown in self-worth. And then just a couple weeks later, I found myself struggling again and feeling like, oh, what's wrong with me, and I'm not good enough, I must not be trying hard enough, you know. So again, it's like I could accept the core qualities of myself, but when I'm struggling again with something like depression or having a hard time in my life, maybe I'll struggle more, and it's harder to accept that. So if you understand what I'm saying, it's, you know, sometimes you might feel like you accept a lot of yourself, but the more you uncover, or the more experiences that come in your life, it might be harder to accept some of those things in your life. So for 3 things that I think make self-acceptance hard, number 1 is that we're not sure how to accept ourselves. I think that's really the hardest part for a lot of us, is just, I know I need to accept myself, but how do I do that? And I'm going to give you some ideas that I hope will help. Number 2, self-acceptance requires us to change. And as we've discussed before, change is difficult, and it's a spiral that we talked in last season about, the spiral of change and how it can take several tries spiraling up and down to actually get the change to work. But as long as we're in the spiral and working on the change, then we're making progress. But change is hard. And then number 3, we may fear that when we accept how we are, that maybe we agree with it, or we think that we will never change. So for instance, if I accept that I have a weakness in getting angry about things, let's say, then I think a lot of us feel like, well, if I accept that, that's just saying that, well, that's just the way I am. I'm just an angry person, and I accept that. That's not what self-acceptance is. Self-acceptance, as we just said, is accepting that we might need to change. And there are some things that we can love about ourselves and things that we don't love, and they're those things that we can change. So, you know, self-acceptance doesn't mean that we like it all or that we want to keep it all. It just means that we're not going to fight ourselves over it anymore. We're not going to cause ourselves that extra pain and trouble. So yes, self-acceptance is possible. I know, because I've worked on it over the years, and like I said, I've regained, you know, I've gained insight into the process, and it's difficult, but it's definitely possible. And I've been able to see growth in self-acceptance with me. Then as far as my clients go, same thing. I've seen them be able to grow in self-acceptance. Some things that are important to know about it is, number one, is self-acceptance is a choice. It's your choice. You get to decide if you want to accept yourself. Only you are standing in your way if you can't accept yourself. Now that can be a positive or a negative. It's great because that means that there's no one in your way but you. Okay, so you don't have to worry about other people preventing this from happening. But on the other hand, a lot of us feel like, oh great, but I don't know how to get out of my own way. Well, we're going to work on that this month. Number two, self-acceptance is unconditional. So it's not that I'm gonna work to accept the things that I like and not accept the things that I don't want to see. No, we got to work to accept all of it. So all that stuff that you've been uncovering as you've been doing self-awareness, we need to learn to accept all those parts of ourselves. And like I've said before, a lot of us struggle more to accept the really remarkable things about ourselves, and we feel like we don't have any talents or strengths or beauty. A lot of us struggle with that more than accepting our weaknesses. So it can go either way. We need to accept all of it. It's unconditional, and it's a process, a lifelong process, I will add. It's not something that we can just suddenly learn this month and then you're done with self-acceptance. As new experiences come, as new learning happens in our life, as new growth happens in our life, part of that process is accepting what happens, accepting how we are, accepting how we age, accepting what we do or can't do, those kinds of things, okay? It's a process. So before we move on, I want you to ask yourself a few questions. This is part of your homework. Here's some honest questions to ask yourself. Number one, what is the most authentic thing about me? I love that question. I think it's a different question. It's not one that I've heard a lot, but it helps me when I think of that. What's the most authentic thing about me? And then on the flip side, what is my greatest fear? Because fear is often what holds us back from self-acceptance. What do I fear the most that people will find out about me? It's another great question. What do you are most afraid of that people might find out about you? What do you wish people knew about you? What do I wish people knew about me? What kinds of things are you maybe hiding that you haven't been able to let shine yet as part of your life's purpose and calling? When do I feel most truly myself? When do I feel most truly myself? This is a big part of discovering your life's purpose, because when you feel like yourself, when you feel so comfortable and confident, those types of things, you need to take note of those and keep a list, because those are the things that are going to be part of your mission and purpose in this life. And then finally, who am I without my mask, my persona, my ego? So if you didn't have any kind of mask, if you weren't hiding, if you weren't pretending to be anybody, if you weren't trying to be anybody, who are you just when you're home by yourself or with your family or with whoever you're most comfortable with? Okay, and write these down in your notebook or journal or on your computer or whatever you're using. Okay? So those are some of the first steps to self-acceptance. There's a few more things I want us to discuss before we wrap up. Number one is that I want us to look at blame and accepting. So there may be things in your life that have happened that weren't your fault. And that tends to be the case for most of us. We at some point or another have things that have happened. And it's really important for us to look at, are we blaming other people for things in our life in any way, shape, or form? Author Haruki Murakami, I slaughtered that, sorry, said that pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. So others may cause us pain, but we allow that suffering. And it's important for us to work to let go of blame. So think about, is there anything that you've blamed other people for? And that could be, you could blame your family, you could blame your spouse, you could blame your friends, your coworkers, you could blame God. Okay, God did this to me and I'm angry at God, okay? It could be any of that. So think about, are there any things in your life that you hold blame for? That you think, well, I wouldn't be this way if that person wouldn't have done this, or if that person wouldn't keep doing this to me, I wouldn't be this way. Well, again, we allow the suffering, okay? They might cause us pain, but we allow it to be suffering. So there's a few things we can do for blame, and this also goes with accepting ourselves. Number one is to accept what has happened. So this can go for even mental illness. Like I was saying, I was struggling with depression again, and I struggle on and off with that. But first I had to accept that that was what was going on. I had to accept that. That's what my body, where my body and my mind is right now. This is what's happening. Even though I don't want to, even though I'm working hard to not feel that way, This is what's happened, okay? So number one has to accept what happened. It might be a divorce that you're trying to accept. It might be someone else hurting you in some other way, okay? But you've got to accept what has happened. Number two, accept the things you cannot change. There are plenty of things in our life that we really can't change. We have circumstances, people, things happening that we can't change, or we can't change right now. So accept the things that you cannot change, and then accept the things that you can change. There are always also things that we can change, and sometimes we feel like, well, I can't change that. I can't change my work. I can't change how I am with my family. I can't change my sleep schedule. I just can't. I can't exercise, That's not true. We can change lots of things. We need to start thinking outside the box and look at what can we change and how can we change it. Number four, accept that you have the power. You have the power. As I said before, you're the only one who stands in your way, and that goes with blame. If you're blaming anybody else, that's not it, okay? It's you. You have the power to make the change you want in your life and to be self-accepting of everything. And number five, accept responsibility for your own happiness. Don't wait for somebody else to try to make you happy. Don't wait for happiness to come and fly down to you like a bird sitting on your shoulder. How often is that ever going to happen, that birds just come and sit on your shoulder? No, instead seek the happiness like we've talked about before in last year's lessons, seeking the sun. Okay, accept that you are responsible for your own happiness, and that will be a great step of working towards self-acceptance. Finally, I want to teach you a few principles that I think will be helpful in working on this self-acceptance, and then I want to give you a good exercise to do this month that builds on the ones that we've already had last time in our last lesson. So this is Viktor Frankl once said, my definition of success is total self-acceptance, and I would have to agree that success is total self-acceptance, because when you can totally accept yourself, you're just comfortable and confident and calm, and you're at peace. You're not fighting yourself. So some of the basic principles for self-acceptance that are important to understand, and we're just touching on these things because we want to keep these lessons kind of short and doable, right? But number one is commit to personal growth. Now, you're already doing that. You're in the personal growth group, okay? And that's great. And if you're watching this video, you're obviously committed to personal growth. You wouldn't be watching this if you weren't. So you're way ahead of the game by committing to personal growth. You're, as I write here in Who Am I Without You, I said self-acceptance doesn't happen by saying, I accept how I am and I'll always be this way. It happens by being able to say, I accept how I am now and I see my potential to become even better. Again, that component of helping us fulfill our life's calling. Then it's about doing it. You must commit to developing yourself to your fullest potential in order to make that happen. So are you committed to developing yourself to the fullest potential? Or are you just committed to growing in that you want to listen to these lessons and that's it? Or will you listen to the lessons and do some of the homework, but you don't really want to reach your full potential, or you're not ready for that? Have you accepted that yet? That you have a great potential and that you want to uncover and understand that. So commit to personal growth, number one. Number two, you must abandon self-defeating behaviors. Now, this is a whole separate topic that we could spend so much time on, how to overcome things like addictions. And I'm talking about, not just addictions to, drugs, alcohol, nicotine, these kinds of things. Of course, those things are not good for your body, and they're going to prevent you from being your best self. So it's important to tackle those kinds of addictions. But also, what about caffeine? I think our country is incredibly caffeine addicted. Is that healthy for you? Is it helpful for you in your life? Probably not so much, especially if you have anxiety or something. It's important to tackle that. Are you addicted to overeating? That's another one. You're not going to feel good about yourself if you can't control your behaviors and do these self-defeating behaviors, self-harm, addictions, any other thing that prevents you. And I have to say, one of the biggies, I think, for a lot of women now is addiction to social media. So easy to spend hours and hours just tuning out on social media. And but is that really your best self? Is there a better way for you to use your time? Is there something that fills you more rather than kind of just helps you escape like that? Sometimes we need to escape, but it's just, these are questions to ask yourself. What self-defeating behaviors am I engaged in that I need to overcome. That might be that you're not sleeping enough. That's a self-defeating behavior. Okay, so you have to overcome your self-defeating behaviors. You really can't accept yourself unless you're working on overcoming those things that are just bringing you down and keep on knocking you down. And like I said, that's a whole different topic for how to overcome those things. But at least it'll be on your radar if that's something that you need to struggle with. And I would say that pretty much all of us have one or two self-defeating behaviors that we participate in, that we can start small, baby steps to start to try to change and overcome. Okay, don't go out there and try to change it all, but just little tiny steps. And part of that step is being aware that it's a self-defeating behavior that you need to change. And then number 3 is we have to change our beliefs. A lot of the fighting we do is that we have beliefs in our head about the way things should be, about the way we need to be in the world, about the things we need to do. I was really surprised this past month as I was working on self-acceptance that, I've done a lot of this kind of work over the years. And I just had a big birthday. I turned the big 4-0. And here I am a few weeks ago suddenly realizing some beliefs that I have that I didn't realize were really kind of self-defeating for me. I knew that I had them, but I thought they were helping me before, and now I'm seeing them in a different light because of where I am in my life and what I want from my life. It's suddenly different. So again, those beliefs, they might be fine for a while and they might help you, and then at some point you might have to change. So I was really surprised that, wow, I actually have some beliefs I need to change. So this is, again, a lifelong process, and it keeps on coming and keeps on coming. But the more we do, the more comfortable we get in our own skin, the more peace we find, the more we are self-accepting. Okay, and there's a lot of tips for how to change your beliefs, but we haven't really gone over those kinds of things in this group. But you can visit my YouTube channel and look at the videos on changing your beliefs or changing your thoughts. Also on my blog, I have a couple of blog posts on changing your thinking and how to use a thought record to do that. So I will include those in the lesson email for this. Some important things to remember: self-acceptance takes time. Don't push it. Just be aware and let it come naturally and slowly. But, as you're aware of it every day, as you work on it just a little bit every day, over time it does get better. It's a daily focus kind of thing. Another thing to keep in mind, your family history definitely can influence how self-accepting you are. Some of us came from families that might have been really good at teaching how to accept yourself, how to see your strengths and weaknesses, and just really kind of embrace it all. Others might have come from families that are not aware at all, don't want to see anything, and you're not allowed to talk about things, and maybe there's pretending going on or mixed messages going on. That can really be difficult. You might have learned to hide your weakness or hide your strength. So it's important to acknowledge where you've come from and where you might have picked up some of these things. And not to blame other people again, but just to understand, oh my goodness, this is where I got that, and this is where I've come with it, and now I want it to be different. I want to accept these things, and I don't need to do what my family did all those years. I can be different. And accepting yourself doesn't mean that you think you're the best or the worst. I think a lot of people think, well, I don't want to accept myself because I'm not the best at that. Like, I like to sing, but just because I say I'm a singer doesn't mean I think I'm the best singer. I'm not. I know I'm not. But I love to sing, and I can accept that. And when I accept it, then I'm going to sing more, and I'm going to sing better, and I'm going to feel happy when I do it, right? And number 4, self-acceptance is a lifelong process. Again, I just can't reinforce that enough. You really, really need to understand that this is going to take a while. So be in it for the long haul if you want self-acceptance. Okay, so what we're going to do for our exercise this time is I want you to take out some of the things you did last time. If you haven't done them yet, I encourage you to go back to lesson 2 of season 2 and to do the strengths and weaknesses list, do the I am exercise if you can, and then I want you to pull those out, and we're going to use those this time. So you might have noticed when you did those exercises that some things were easier to accept than others, right? So I'm emotional. Yep, I certainly am emotional. That's easy. But maybe I am mean. Well, I guess I'm mean, but I don't want to be mean. I don't know if I like that, okay? So often the traits that we despise are the ones that we have the most trouble accepting. Okay, we don't want to be that way, so we really fight it again. Or we may struggle again to accept the positives. So I wish I were talented. People tell me I am, but I just don't believe that, right? So I want you to go back through the traits on these lists that you've done, and I want you to say each out loud and see how it feels. So say, I am creative. I am stubborn. I am jealous, okay? These kinds of things. Those that are easy to own are the ones that you probably have already accepted. But those that have any kind of power over you or that are too difficult, and I know that this was part of the I am exercise, but I want you to go back and kind of understand a little bit more about why those things might be difficult. And I want you to do the same thing with the strengths and weaknesses list that you did with the I am exercise. So I want you to go back and understand which ones are the ones that you're having trouble accepting. Star them, circle them, and then I want you to look for, commonalities in your lists. And that way you'll start to understand, like, okay, these are the things I'm really having trouble with. And then when you start to see them, then you can start to accept them or choose to accept them, because it's a choice you can make each day. And so when you start to see that I am talented comes up and you're going, I am not talented, and you can hear it in your head maybe, then you can choose to do something different and say, yes, I am talented. I accept that today. I'm just going to accept it. Or when someone gives you a compliment about something, you can say, you can say thank you. And that's it, right? And accept it. So as you go throughout your days and weeks, I want you to keep those parts of you in mind, those ones that you're struggling to accept, and look for times in your life when you're not accepting them, when you're fighting them, and then maybe sit with your journal and write about what's going on, like what kind of beliefs are there when you're not accepting them, what circumstances are happening that are making it difficult for you to accept. Okay, these kinds of things. And then I want you to take a deep breath when you're having trouble accepting things. And I want you to take a deep breath and I want you to repeat, I see this and I accept that it is. Okay, that's it. I see it and I accept that it is. That could be something positive or something negative that you see. It could be a mental illness. It could be a person in your life that you're struggling with, a relationship. It could be your child that you're struggling with or that isn't the way that you want them to be. I see this and I accept that it is. Doesn't mean that I'm not going to work to change it. Doesn't mean that I love it. But it is. It's happening. It's done. It is, right? So we're going to accept that it is. And then when a strength shows up in your life, you do the exact same thing. I see this and I accept that it is. I see that I was good at that today and I accept it. And I'm allowed to feel good about doing something good today, right? And accepting it. So that's what we're going to work on. And finally, I want you to think about something, this question, because this will maybe kind of guide you and direct you and help you to want to do this more. But just imagine if every part of you could be accepted. What if you could accept every part of yourself? The good, the bad, the ugly, the exceptional. What would that feel like? Really imagine it, write about it. How would it impact you, your relationships, your world? Okay, if you could accept everything about yourself, what kind of difference could that make in your life? I want you to think about that and write about it and ponder it until we meet next time, because that is, once you can see it and envision it, then you can hopefully want to get there. Because when you really think about what it would be like to accept everything, boy, wouldn't it be wonderful? I sure think so. So I hope that this can help you get started on self-acceptance, and then that will lead us into next lesson, which will be on self-love, which is a fabulous topic and a really fun one, a lot of great ideas for that. So keep working through these things, commit to personal growth, keep accepting yourself, working on these, not just this, but all the other things we've been talking about. And hopefully we can become more self-accepting and feel good about ourselves. To close, I want to just read a little piece here from Who Am I Without You? So for most, self-acceptance is a day-by-day, moment-by-moment process. I've found it's most helpful to begin by accepting the small pieces as they come. It can feel less overwhelming this way, yet the process still leads toward the goal of complete self-acceptance. Some things will be difficult to accept, but with time and work, the process of self-acceptance cleanses and frees us to simply be who we are. And that's our goal, to simply be who we are, and then to work on reaching our greatest potential. That comes later. Okay? All right, so until next time, good luck with your work, and I hope you'll visit me on my website at drchristinahibbert.com for more tools and exercises and videos and things that can help you with this. And otherwise, we'll see you again next time in our This Is How We Grow personal growth group. Bye-bye, everybody.